Hello YouTube and welcome to Full Dottle, a channel dedicated to tamping topics such as pipes, tobacco, lore, and more. I am your host, the Bearded Briarman, and without further ado, let's get lit. Welcome back everyone, and on this episode of Full Dottle, we're going to be discussing how to choose a tobacco, and it is geared for the beginner smoker. I'm not going to tell you in this episode which blend you should try as a beginner smoker. Instead, the objective of this episode is going to be to educate you in tobacco itself, so that you can make a more informed decision based off of your preferences. There are going to be two parts to this video because it is a complex topic. In the first part, we're going to discuss the different types of tobaccos, their flavors, and how they are cured. We're also going to talk about the different cuts of tobacco. In the second part, we're going to discuss each blend and also how to use the search function on tobaccoreviews.com to seek out the type of tobaccos you desire. So, let's get started. Virginias are one of the most common types of tobaccos used and constitute the base of many blends. Virginias are flue cured, which means after harvesting it is hung in an enclosed room where the flue from an externally fed firebox gradually raises the temperature of the room to dry out the leaves. Virginias range in color from light to dark. The light-colored Virginia can have a flavor characteristic described as sweet, grass or hay-like, tangy like the zest of a lemon, and floral. The flavor characteristics of the dark Virginia can be described as toasted rye bread or malted grain and have the sweetness of a pastry. Virginias have a high sugar content, low nicotine content. The high sugar content can cause a Virginia to burn very hot, and if smoked improperly, has a tendency to cause tongue bite, a caustic action on the tongue, which can feel like it is burnt. You may also hear of stoved Virginias. Stoving a Virginia is a type of process where they cook the Virginia leaf. This causes the sugars to caramelize and deepens and makes a more complex flavor profile. Another very common type of tobacco used in many blends is burley. Burley is air cured, meaning that once it is harvested, it is hung in open barns where the free circulation of air gradually dries the leaf. Burley has a flavor characteristic that can be described as dry, woody, and nutty. Burley has a very low sugar content and a very high nicotine content. This means that burley is often used to maintain a cooler burn rate for other blends. Burley also is known as the chameleon of tobaccos and has a tendency to take on the flavor of other tobaccos and therefore is often used in aromatic blends because it absorbs the flavor very well. You may also hear of Kentucky. Kentucky is a type of burley, and if you hear of dark-fired Kentucky, that is a fire-cured type of tobacco. Fire curing is where they take the tobacco and hang it over a smoldering fire. The smoldering fire actually imparts smoke particles onto the tobacco leaf, causing it to have a fuller, more robust flavor. And finally, we come to Oriental tobaccos. Oriental tobaccos are a class of tobaccos that are grown in the Mediterranean region. These tobaccos are sun-cured, which means after harvesting, they are dried under the open sun. Oriental tobaccos are very fragrant tobaccos, almost incense-like. The flavor characteristic of these tobaccos can be described as earthy, herbal, sweet and sour, and musty. These tobaccos also have very low sugar content and very low nicotine content. They make an excellent condiment to many blends. Now let's discuss condiment tobaccos. These tobaccos are not different varietals of tobaccos, but rather tobaccos that we've already discussed prepared in different ways to create a unique flavor profile. Latakia is actually an oriental tobacco that has been fire cured. And as we discussed earlier, fire curing a tobacco means they hung the tobacco in a barn and had a smoldering fire underneath it. This smoldering fire actually releases smoke particles that adhere to the tobacco leaf, causing the tobacco to take on a very smoky, barbecue-esque type flavor. It is a very stout, very pungent type flavor. Perique is a type of burley tobacco that is fermented under high pressure in oak barrels. Perique takes on a very peppery, spicy flavor and has undertones of fig and plum. Cavendish is actually a Virginia tobacco that has been subjected to high temperature steams and pressure. This basically cooks the leaf, causing the sugars within it to caramelize and become richer, tasting like honey or brown sugar. Most of the other natural flavors are lost during this process, but Cavendish creates a very thick, creamy smoke. There are two different types of Cavendish. There are sweetened and unsweetened. Sweetened Cavendishes are generally sweetened with flavorings, and they take on whatever flavorings are used. Unsweetened is the natural Cavendish and only has the sweetness that are present within the leaf, the honeys and brown sugars we discussed. Now let's discuss the different cuts of tobacco. The cut of the tobacco is not necessarily going to impart any new flavors. However, when a tobacco burns slowly, it releases its flavors differently than when it burns fast. If you smoke improperly and the tobacco gets too hot, it will become rough and undesirable. Each cut, depending on density, will burn at different rates. The more dense the cut, the slower it will burn. So take that into consideration. Now, when I was in the military, in order to memorize things, they would put things into sing-song, and they called it a ditty. For this example, we're going to use a ditty, and we're going to say, cake, flake, ribbon, rope. Those are your four main types of cuts. A cake is simply the tobacco leaf pressed into a brick. These bricks, if they are very dense, can be cut later into what is known as a plug. If these cakes are not very dense, say they use a granulated type of tobacco, they're known as a crumble cake. They're easily broken up. Then we have flake tobaccos. Flakes are nothing more than the cake sliced into segments of tobacco, rectangular in shape and easily broken up. Then we have ribbon cut tobacco. Ribbon cut tobacco is one of the most common forms used in each blend. Just as it sounds, the tobacco leaf is sliced to resemble ribbons. There are many different styles of ribbon. There are many thicknesses of ribbon. And ribbon cut can also be cross-cut to create the granular type tobaccos I was just discussing. Next, we have rope cut tobacco. Rope tobacco is the leaf as a whole twisted into a rope. This can later be sliced into what is known as coins or medallions. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this episode of Full Dottle. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, show me some love. Don't forget to stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to discuss the different blends of tobacco and how to utilize the search function on tobaccoreviews.com to seek out the types of tobaccos that you desire. Until we see each other again, I bid you farewell and happy piping. Goodbye. Don't forget to enlist in the Full Dottle platoon. It's easy. Just click the subscribe button. Also, hit that bell icon to be notified as soon as I upload my next video.